entrance. Rayburn was watching Truman, who he always thought was kind of pale. Now he got a little paler. "Jesus Christ and General Jackson," Truman exclaimed as he hung up the phone, too shocked to even hide it. He tried to remain calm. He told the others in the room he had to go to the White House on a special call. He immediately stood up, walked to the door, and put his hand on the knob, then stopped and turned. "Boys, this is in this room. Something must have happened." Truman closed the door firmly behind him, then broke into a full run, this time through the now almost empty Capitol. His footsteps echoed around the marble corridors as he dashed past statues of generals and politicians, past the Senate barber shop, and up the stairs to his vice presidential office. He was out of breath. He grabbed his hat and told his staff he was headed to the White House, but to say nothing about it. He didn't have time to explain, and anyway, he really didn't know much more than that. Outside, it was raining. Truman got into his official black Mercury car and gave instructions to his driver, Tom Hardy. Once again, he left his Secret Service detail behind. Between the weather and traffic, it took Truman more than 10 minutes to get to the White House, and all that time he wondered what was going on. President Roosevelt was supposed to be in Warm Springs, Georgia, where he had spent the past 2 weeks recovering from exhaustion after a wartime summit in Yalta with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin. Maybe FDR had returned to Washington. His old friend Julius Atwood, a retired Episcopal bishop, had been buried in Washington earlier in the day. Had the president attended the ceremony and now wanted to see Truman? But since becoming vice president almost 3 months ago, he had met privately with Roosevelt only twice. Why now? At 5:25, Truman's car turned off Pennsylvania Avenue, passed through the Northwest Gate, and drove up under the north portico of the White House. At the front door, Truman was met by ushers, who took his hat and directed him to the president's small, oak-paneled elevator. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt was waiting for him in her private study on the second floor, along with her daughter and son-in-law, Anna and Lieutenant Colonel John Bodiger, and Steve Early. The 2 women were dressed in black. The First Lady walked up to Truman, put her arm on his shoulder, and said, "Harry, the president is dead." Truman was too stunned to speak. He had hurried to the White House to see the president. Now here he was, suddenly finding out he was the president. It took him a moment to steady himself. He asked Mrs. Roosevelt, "Is there anything I can do for you?" "Is there anything we can do for you?" she replied, "for you are the one in trouble now." Minutes later, at 5:47, the news bulletin flashed across the country and the world. FDR, the man who led the nation over the past 12 years, through the Depression and Pearl Harbor, and now to the verge of victory in Europe in the Second World War, had died of a cerebral hemorrhage at the age of 63. The White House, mostly deserted with Roosevelt away, suddenly sprang into motion. A meeting of the cabinet was called for 6:15. Truman directed that congressional leaders be asked to attend, and Harlan Stone, Chief Justice of the United States, was summoned to the White House to administer the oath of office. There was one more thing Truman needed to do. At 6 o'clock, he called his wife Bess at their modest 2-bedroom apartment up Connecticut Avenue. His daughter Margaret answered the phone. She hadn't heard the news yet, and she started kidding around with him as usual. He cut her off and told her to put her mother on the line. Truman normally shared everything with Bess, but there was no time for that now. He told her President Roosevelt was dead, and he was sending a car for her, Margaret, and his mother-in-law, Madge Wallace, who lived with the family. He wanted them by his side when he took the oath of office. Truman hung up the phone. He could tell that the conversation had shaken his wife. Ever since he'd accepted the nomination for vice president the previous summer, he knew this was her greatest fear, that